everyone. Let's make sure the image is showing up. And it is beautiful. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Can you all hear me okay? I trust the sound is good. I'm just going to give it a quick check over here. Check is good. Is there sound? This isn't going to help me. All righty. Let's make sure the sound is working okay. Stop cam mute. Let's see, cam and mic. Audio. Audio is coming from there. Yes, it does look like we have a sound. If everyone can't hear me okay, I can push the volume up a bit. Let me go scroll down really quick. Yes, audio and video are completely okay. Good. I'm asking because I am actually trying out some new software, which will do takes care of broadcasting for me, and I'm using the free version right now. But if everything works okay today, I will get the paid the paid version. And so wonderful! Thank you all for being here. Hope you enjoyed the music in the beginning. The music in the beginning was, in fact, my solo piano album that I did a while ago and just re-released again, called Emptiness Dances. And oh, it's on Pandora and Spotify. You can buy it at CD Baby or iTunes. It's on iTunes as well. A variety of places that have it, where you can either just listen to it, or if you want to support in my endeavors, you can buy it as well. Um, I don't put out a lot of my music for sale, simply because I don't really have the time to do everything necessary to make that happen. But hopefully you enjoyed it. I still love to write music, although I don't play perform in public anymore. I just do this. I just do this whole this spiritual guy thing. So today we have let's see, there's a black currant hibiscus tea for anybody who's interested. Sometimes people actually ask. Anyway, Dale says hi from Massachusetts, and oops, did I guess I did. I can actually, in this thing, I can show the comments on the screen if they're if it's worthwhile. Um, Tom McClellan says, "Hi GP, I have ADHD. Can you please talk about the role of attention in awakening and how any mental disorders may be an impediment to it? Thank you." Wow. Well, let's jump right into it, shall we, everyone? Um, First off, I would be slow to label yourself, to give yourself any kind of fancy diagnostic. Again, because this is a public forum and I am not a medical doctor. I have no authority or credibility when it comes to talking about illnesses or disease, and I take none. Nothing I say that has to do with medicine or diagnosis or anything has any value other than it is my opinion. Right? From the perspective of a spiritual teacher who is sensitive to how people identify themselves with things, I find that when someone gets a diagnosis of something, they begin to take on the characteristics of that diagnosis. So I'm always cautious about it. Okay, there are a set of symptoms that you have that when the doctor looked at it, he diagnosed it as ADHD. Now, if we really take a look at the symptoms, you'll find that some of the characteristics of ADHD may be there, some may be there in abundance, others may not be there at all. So don't just take it all, uh, uh, the whole truckload of everything, but be really honoring of yourself and looking at exactly what experience you are having, and try to separate out everything that is just a story in the mind about what the problem is, because the mind, if believed enough, will create symptoms and create circumstances really out of thin air. Secondarily, watch how you feel about yourself. Notice that you may feel less than, you may feel cursed or punished, you may feel as if you don't deserve it, you may feel as if it makes somehow um, makes you less than or defective or not enough in some way. Notice those feelings as well. Those are equally untrue. There is simply a set of characteristics that your nervous system has gotten into the habit of. Right? They are not any kind of representation of your character. They are not a permanent condition. And it has been the result, probably exclusively around training. If, when I was, my parents, especially my mother, wanted me to have nothing to do with music. And I loved music. Uh, and so whenever I would be practicing, she would always interrupt me. Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Go over here. Please take this. Take this. I need you to go to the store for me. Right? Anything. Right? So my nervous system got trained into expecting to be interrupted. And I would sit down to play. And after a few moments, there would be an anticipation in me. I would be distracted from what I was doing. Over time, I learned to become to see that for what it was, and became capable of enormous amounts of concentration and focus. Now we live in an age where there is a constant demand, a constant uh, lobbying for your attention, mostly to tell you things you don't need to know, sell you stuff you don't need to have, and have experiences you don't need. I mean, it's all really people projecting, trying to influence you to basically giving them what they want, and so we have Facebook and text and email and Snapchat and Instagram and Periscope and Twitter and all of these things. Um, so notice that it's not all you, right? There is a constant demand on our attention, and we can get habituated into feeling. The nervous system gets to the point where it feels like it's constantly being have to be alert, because it's going to miss something, either an opportunity, that next text coming in. This could be it. This could be my ship finally coming in, right? This is going to be the big day in my life. Or it could be like, it could be something to be afraid of, to be aware of, that there's got to be this alertness to potential danger. These are habit patterns in the nervous system that have literally gotten ingrained. They've altered the neurology, so you could see it as actual brain patterns, and just your regular materialistic doctor is just going to give you some drugs because he doesn't go further than that brain pattern. The brain pattern is the cause. Let's just switch the brain pattern. It's not the cause. It's the symptom. There's something much deeper in the nervous system that's there. So that part of the way I wanted to answer your question was to give you some tools by which you can begin to disidentify with the condition, because it is just a condition in the nervous system, and it is not you. You are the consciousness that is aware of this condition, right? And so this should give you some ammunition for actually becoming capable of going beyond it, maybe even healing it completely, so that you do have the capacity to focus. Now, this dovetails very nicely to the second half of your question. What about the role of it in awakening? Here's the bottom line: nothing, absolutely nothing, can keep you from knowing who you are. No condition, no circumstance, no upbringing, no past lives, nothing. There are no blocks to awakening, period, end of story. Imagine if there were. Oh, the struggle we would have to go through. Your name's Tom. You're a boy. If I was to say to you, you know, does what role? I got ADHD. Is it possible for me to know that I'm a boy? You are a boy, right? You are already the awakened being you're seeking. You just don't know it, right? And so, yes, in a lot of traditions, focus and concentration, especially in meditation, like in samadhi and that sort of thing, are a key part of it, and that you have to get to this place of focus. Well, um, Muji points it out. As a matter of fact, even the Buddhist text that points it out. Nobody can do that all the time. Nobody can maintain focus all the time. And if maintaining focus is necessary to awaken, then nobody's going to be able to awaken because nobody can maintain the focus. It'll last as only as long as my focus is there. And when it's gone, there's no more awakening. So awakening is something else altogether. It is a recognition of something. Right? What I want to draw your attention to right now, let's talk about your ADHD again. This 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 proclivity for getting easily distracted. Right? Now, do you not recognize, shutting the window, some kids outside playing, do you not recognize when you have gotten distracted? Okay? And while you've been distracted, you can probably tell me everything that you experienced while you were distracted, right? So even though attention had been distracted, conscious awareness was still there, wasn't it? There was simply a different kind of energy playing out in the mind. In one instance, it looks focused. In the next instance, it's focused on something that you didn't choose it to focus on, like you kind of slipped into a dream. But there's still something aware of every last bit of it, wasn't it? Right? That's you. That's consciousness. Realizing that that is who you are is awakening, right? So notice it's there, right? Whether you're distracted or totally dialed in, whether you're confused or have absolute clarity, whether your mind's going 1,000 miles a minute, or you're om namah shivaya, om namah shivaya. It's the same, isn't it? That which is aware of all of that is absolutely the same. Bring your attention there. However often, right? If you just distract, but don't worry about, even if you're distracted, just notice that it's still there, right? Now, remember, awakening can't be an event in time. If it's an event, it has a beginning, which means it has an end, which means the whole thing about realizing the reality of you has to be a myth, right? Because it would have a beginning and end. It would be just like everything else. So awakening must be the awakening to an eternal fact. Well, let's look on a very practical level. Let's look at what our actual lives and experiences are and see. Because if there is something that is here all the time, never began and is never going to end, it's obvious it should be here, right? Okay. Well, what is here in your experience that actually meets that criteria? Consciousness. The consciousness of ADHD, or the consciousness of your shoes, or the consciousness of brushing your teeth in the morning. Right? It's all happening in consciousness. Isn't that consciousness absolutely the same? Did it have a beginning? Did it have an end? The only mental disorder that is an impediment is arrogance. That's the only mental the mental condition that is that's an impediment to awakening. The idea that I already know, right? But even the idea that I already know this all, I got this down, and I don't need anything else. Isn't that also isn't that also being witnessed by this other more subtle place? So I think I've covered it on all sorts of different levels for you, Tom, where you can address it on the very practical level of dealing with a particular condition. And friend, we all have them. There's nobody gets through this life unscathed, So you have this one, somebody else, may have an addiction. Addictions don't get in the way of it either. Nothing can stop you from knowing who you are, because nothing can actually change you from what you are into what you are not. And that is the simple fact of it. So, how's that, buddy? Thank you for joining us. By the way, and everyone that's here, and we're up to like 42 of us right in this moment, if you could just type in where you're from, where you're listening or watching from, and especially if this is your first time in Satsang, that would be really great. Ava says, gee, oops, namaste, so wonderful to be here again. Oh, have your music before Satsang. Thank you. Uh, I still love to do music. I just don't have the time to do it as much anymore. Ducks, hey man, how are you? Long time no see. I've been noticing a subtle layer of thought that formulates an abstract form of thought. The next layer makes the thought a sentence. What is that first layer? Well, that's interesting. You know, interestingly enough, in the Lankavatara Sutra, which is probably the most, it took me about 5, 6 readings before it finally, bang, really, really hit me hard. Um, because it's totally non-dual, and it's a Buddhist sutra. It was given by the Buddha, and he has a whole section in there about words, sounds, sentences, and meaning. Because you're absolutely right. Every sound that makes up the word is a thought, right? The word is a thought, and then the sentence is a thought. And we kind of anticipate, Humor is when somebody starts saying something and it goes somewhere you weren't expecting them to go, right? So, but instead of the construction of it, which is useful, pay attention to that which is aware of all of it, no matter how subtly you break it down into the tiniest little sounds. There's still something more subtle that is aware of that, even that. However subtle that sound is, there's something even subtler. Isn't that subtle thing you? And isn't what this really is all about is knowing who that is knowing yourself as you actually are? And remember, the thought only takes real shape and purpose and power when the entire thought is present as meaning. Now, meaning is a different level. And meaning can be there before any sound, to make up any word, to make up any sentence, to make up any paragraph, to make up any chapter, to make up any book is ever put together. The words carry the word. The word is the meaning. And notice, whenever you go to say anything, that the meaning you want to convey is there, it's complete, it's whole, it's already a thing, even though it has no form. And then it comes out as consciousness chooses the right sounds to make the right words, to make the right sentences. And so, yes, at every single layer of that, you find uh, uh, you find the basic sound, which is just a sound coming out of your mouth. The next level of abstraction would be like a syllable. The next level of abstraction would be a word, right? But remember, look for what it is that's driving the sounds and all of these different constructions to be put together. What's the blueprint, right? Well, the blueprint is the meaning, which is the dynamic aspect of consciousness that is giving itself expression. In other words, it's you. You And this undeniable and unstoppable impulse we all have towards self expression, which is the dynamic nature of consciousness itself, is doing just that. Right? Now, but now don't mistake yourself for any of the concepts or structures that are being produced to convey the meaning, right? You're prior even to the meaning. You are what gives the meaning meaning. You are what makes a meaning true. It's what shines through all the sounds and all the words. That's the beauty of the chanting of the word of Om, because it's all sounds. When it's said correctly, you simply open your mouth and close it. And in that simple action of opening and closing your mouth, all the way down to the and then the silence in between that and the next breath, in that one gesture, all sounds are present. And that one sound is simply broken up by consonants and different shapes and the like, but the basic sound, well, that's the sound of the universe. That is the most fundamental level, the most fundamental vibration of creation, you might say. And everything beyond that is an abstraction, right? But as long as you see that that the abstraction is representing something real, namely you won't get stuck in the abstraction. You won't get lost in it. Is that helpful? I mean, I know I took it in probably in a slightly different way than you were intending, but there we have it. Dave and Elaine, hi GP and all. Greetings from Southeast England. Enjoying the music? Good. Glad you like it. Dave says hi from Massachusetts. John Sheehan says another wet and windy night here in Ireland. I'd like to join you there. I love wet and windy, actually. Um, Dale Wiggins says, has teaching non-duality and meditation had any success in helping autistic folks that you know of? Any stories about what it's like for their true self to watch their mind's unique type of thoughts? Um, well, I have one story. I did a series of meditations, and I worked with this other guy who did, brain entrainment, solfeggio frequencies, binaural beats, and that sort of thing. And we put together um, an app. And the way the app was set up, you could listen to just the music, you could listen to just the words, or you could mix the music and the words together to any degree that you want. And I had someone um, who was actually somebody who had devoted their life to working with autistic. She had an autistic child. And she said, much to her surprise, she made a deal with it was her son, that if he would if he would listen to these meditations with her for 5 minutes, that he could do something else, and they made that deal. Well, she did it. Turns out he liked the voice without the words. That was easier for him, and he didn't want it to stop after 5 minutes. Not only that, he started snuggling with her. He started actually wanting to get close to his mother. So while I can't point and say these are cure for these kinds of things, I do believe that there are many, many things that can bring calmness to the nervous system. I mean, autism is simply, it's as if there's this wall between you and the rest of the world. That's the way I've heard it described. And I do have a friend of mine who, in his 20s, through some mysterious way, he became a spiritual teacher after the fact, needless to say, spontaneously came out of his autism. And I've known him for years now. I see very little evidence of it left. There's still some. There's a little bit of it, um, uh, but not very much of it. He's very communicable. He's very personable. He's very with people, very smart. Um, and so eh, and so I know that there is a way through it. I think I don't really. I'm not an expert at this, so I don't know how to communicate to the autistic. But I know that wall is is a creation of the nervous system. It had a reason for doing it. I don't really know what it is. It can be different for every single individual. It can be this, but there still is within them the same consciousness that is listening to me right now. So I suspect that with a certain degree of of focus of attention, or bringing the attention to that consciousness that is just as alive in them as it is in you and me, that a real dramatic shift in the energy can take place. That's, that's speculation on my part. That's the most I know of it as now. I do know that there's a lot of interest in meditation and the like for autistic, and I know of that, that one personal experience that she shared with me. Needless to say, she became a fan of my meditations. So, oops, jumping up and down. Oh my goodness. Dave Rose says hi from Massachusetts. Did I get? Oh, John, I already did. Okay. Carrie says hi from Australia. Sound is fine. Okay, louder. Up a bit, please. Is the sound okay? I can push the sound a little louder, just a touch. John Sheehan says, could we restate and or clarify that it is consciousness that is conscious and not the human body? Yes, but this is something you have to explore for yourself. I had plenty of doubts about that, and I explored it enough to become convinced that I have no experience outside of consciousness. Now, some would argue, well, that's not enough, right? You have to have some kind of objective proof. Well, here's the problem with that, and this is the whole problem between non-duality and materialistic science, is that consciousness is totally subjective. It cannot be studied objectively, which means that the criteria by which materialistic science, classical analysis, the scientific method, would conclude that it is not the body is incapable of doing so, because it cannot study it as an object. It can only be studied subjectively. When you're looking at it subjectively, the only thing you have to go on is your own experience. Now, if you look at your own experience, nothing you experience is outside of consciousness. You do not have, from your vantage point, from your own experience, you have absolutely no evidence whatsoever that anything exists outside of independent of consciousness. If I was to even examine it from the point of view of the way science looks at it, there's all sorts of activities in the brain, but they've never been able to find a center. Nobody's ever been able to find a structure that is consciousness, that actually correlates to consciousness. They're saying now, okay, it's the frontal lobe, right? In the neocortex, the cerebral cortex, the frontal lobe is the center of consciousness. But if they look at different parts, well, not all of it, right? Memory seems to be in one place, and cognitive abilities in another. And right, if you look at this entire thing, you do see a functioning there. But keep looking to find which one of those structures is actually saying, I see it, right? Somewhere in there has to be some little structure, something that is the final place that says, I see it. Right? Otherwise, it's like a phantom, like an emergent property. It's just kind of, and of course, the dominant view in materialistic science is that it's an illusion, that there isn't anybody there, and there isn't consciousness, that it does not exist at all. It is simply an artifact, an unnecessary artifact of the functioning of the brain. Well, it's consciousness that came up with that idea. So it's kind of, and even to say it's an illusion, well, it kind of implies there's something there to have an illusion. When you begin to explore this, you find that you can never, no matter how small you get, what do you get down to some little atom somewhere that's the consciousness atom, right? I mean, really examine it. We think of the human body and the brain. Oh, the brain is conscious. Well, not all of it, right? The 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 optic nerve that converts the light into electrical impulse is not seeing anything any more than the wires of your the wire of your computer hooked up to an external disk drive is actually seeing the data that's going across. Only you are. Matter of fact, the computer you're looking at me at right now does not see any of this. There's no consciousness there. Right? So this is the kind of thing that you explore, and the more you explore it, the more flimsy you find the argument that consciousness is a function of the brain to be. That's not my experience. Matter of fact, the only experience I have is consciousness. Consciousness and experience are one and the same. No consciousness, no experience, right? You cannot separate the two. Now, on another plane, when I meditate on the actual experience of form, these are the five skandhas of Buddhism. Look at any form that I see, I can find nothing in the form that tells me the form exists independently of myself. And I do that with all of the senses, and I realize that I am experiencing what is called sensation. And while I can point to a sensation that I'm having, a particular feeling or particular sound, I cannot, that sensation doesn't tell me conclusively what's producing that. Is there a body producing that? I have no evidence for that. I only have the evidence of the sensation and then an assumption that there's a physical body that is producing it. Put that aside, put the assumption aside and explore it for yourself. And what do you find? Sensation, no body, which means the word sensation is inaccurate because it assumes that it is information being collected from an external source. Well, if there is no external source, then this information that's being collected is not a sensation, it's a perception. And I can keep going all the way until there's nothing left but me perceiving it. And then I realize that there is no body, there's just consciousness, and what consciousness perceives is consciousness. You cannot separate the two. That what I call sensations are simply conscious. They are made of consciousness. They're not made of matter. They're not made of a body. They're not made of a world. They're not made of the interaction of atoms. None of that exists. It is simply made of consciousness. And that's a completely different perception of experience, right? Because we're starting directly with experience, directly, and then deducing from our experience what is true. We start with experience, and we're already told. The only reason non-dual inquiry is difficult because we've already been told that what you're experiencing is coming from an external world, and nobody bothers to question that. Since I was 17 years old, when suddenly it said, "Wait a minute, is that true?" The thought just spontaneously arose in me. Right? And I went, "Holy mackerel! I have no evidence for that." Right? 2 years later, my life completely fell apart, and that became more than just an interesting idea, which it was at the time a very amazing idea, but it didn't hurt my life until I completely fell apart. It didn't touch my life really until it completely fell apart. But there's a way in which you can begin to examine it, and that's what non-dual inquiry is all about. Well, primarily, it's about discovering who you are. Once you discover yourself as consciousness, and note that that is the sum total of your experience, the mission now becomes, well, what is the nature of consciousness? Which is to say, what is the nature of myself? Because consciousness is myself. Now that very same focus begins to look outward at all of experience, and you discover there is no world, there is no matter. There are no material forces. There is nothing but consciousness. Does that help you, John? In your own inquiry into it? Hi from Glasgow, from John Watson. Carrie from Oakland, California. Hello, Carrie. Chris Skills. Hello, GP. The stage where I realize there is no doer, thoughts just happen, actions just happen, just like the weather happens. Everything is consciousness, and there is no person. It's just the flow of God. Yep, there is no person. There's no doer. It's it's just it's just happening. Every thought is a cosmic event. And you're no longer the originator of it, then you're originating then you're the originator of the sunlight that is washing across your face, or the originator of the sunrise, or the growing of a flower, or a blade of grass, or the mosquito that's bugging you. You're not the you're not there's no body causing it. It is the spontaneous appearing, an instant in this moment Big Bang, that is the perpetual unfolding of consciousness to itself, knowing itself. All of creation is consciousness self image. And of course, being infinite, the self image is infinite, but it is constantly being produced. It's not in time. So thoughts just happen. Now, with thoughts just happening, and I'm not the doer of them, I get some space between myself and the thoughts, because thoughts are repetitive, aren't they? Thoughts form patterns, just like everything else. Everything is conditioned energy, isn't it? I mean, this trackpad that I'm using to scroll to scroll the comments, it's conditioned energy, isn't it? A bunch of piece parts brought together, and as a whole, they have a particular function. Right? The piece parts themselves don't have that function. When it comes together in this form, temporarily, it has that function. Thoughts work the same way, only they've come together. It's more organic, right? Like a body is a things coming together, but there was nobody who made the body. It just it came together in this form. At least nobody personally, right? The inevitability of it did not come because there was some god somewhere who decided, I'm going to make a human. um, so all of these thoughts just happening, but that doesn't mean we're the slave to them, right? When you realize that they're just happening, right, you actually become their master, because you still have control over what you believe about those thoughts. If you believe a thought, you actually feed it and perpetuate it. If you don't believe that thought, right, if you don't believe the thought, I am this body, well, you stop perpetuating that. You stop having that as an experience. And you begin to see everything as the flow of God. But we want to see things as they are. There's still the need for us to see through our story about what it is we are experiencing. It's material, it's objective, it's out there, it can get me, it's right. All of which are various kinds of thought forms. This is the deepening of experience. This is the deepening of your insight. This is the deepening of your non-dual inquiry. So, okay, thoughts are just happening. That means, and there's no doer of them. There's no thinker of thoughts or doer of deeds. Fantastic. There's still something, obviously, self-evidently, that is aware of those thoughts and is now aware that there's no doer of those thoughts. Right? Now, I want you to get this viscerally, not just intellectually. See if you can actually find a doer, because the world believes there's a doer. Right? You were raised to believe that there is a doer. Can you find that doer? And if you can't, then you know for sure that you have actually felt that the doer does not exist. There is no, these things are just happening. Okay, they are just happening. Then who are you? You're still there perceiving them. And of course, if you weren't there, they couldn't happen, could they? Where's the thought if there's nobody there to see it? They're not out there somewhere else. Nobody else is looking at your thoughts. Only you are. Well, who are you? Who is it that's looking at those thoughts? I really want to turn your attention, because it could Philosophically, you can look, oh my, there's no doer, and you can see that, and they could be really fascinated, and then the mind can jump on it. Oh, isn't that cool? Isn't that really? I don't think, right? And the bigger question is, okay, you're not the doer, you're not the thinker of thoughts, but you're here. You're obviously here. Who are you? What are you? This is where it's got to lead to. Not merely to seeing that there is no doer, but to seeing who is the one seeing that there is no doer. Because even that is a thought, an insight. It's deeper than just a random thought. It's an insight. There's truth behind it. But to whom is that appearing? To whom is that the truth? Are you following me, Chris? Of course you are. You're good. Oh, wonderful. Oh, please like and share, by the way. I always keep forgetting to mention that. Chris says he's trying to cement. Ivan says hi from Bulgaria. Hi, Ivan. Um, trying to cement this understanding. Nobody is doing anything. It's just the universe unfolding. Right. And now who are you? Right. The universe. You're speaking as if the universe is something else out there, right? And again, I'm not letting you rest here. You got it. You're absolutely right. You do have that understanding. There's no doer there. I'm not letting you rest there. I've just pulled this rug out from under you because I'm pushing you, because I know you can go all the way. And I don't want you stopping and renting an apartment somewhere halfway across the bridge, right? So who is noticing that nobody's doing anything, right? Not nobody. Somebody is noticed that there's no doer, and that this is just the universe unfolding. Who's that? Who's that? Dave and Elaine. Recently, Muji replied to a mother's question of how to help her child maintain the innocence of being, saying, "You become what you want him to be," which we thought was a lovely answer. Indeed, it is. So, if we can abide in the reality of our own being, life can unfold naturally and be as it is. If activity and doing take place, it arises from this place. Absolutely correct. The child will naturally take on the energy of its parent, right? Now, every child is going to have a fall, okay? There's no way you can stop conditioning from happening, right? Because if it does, they're dysfunctional. There's nobody there. Something has to solidify enough to be functional in life, but you don't want it to be so strong and so identified with that it's a struggle to transcend it later on. Okay? So the more awake the parent is, the more naturally drawn to awakeness the child is going to be, and the less resistance to its own awakening that there will be. Um, so ultimately, you put your mask on first before you put it on your child's, right? Give your oxygen to yourself first, and then give it to your child. And so abiding in the reality of our own being, is there any other place? You say, if we can abide in the reality of our own being, is there any other place you could be other than reality? Notice, if we can abide in the reality of our own being, well, where else are you? One of the temptations of Christ, actually, all of the temptations, I think part of it was kind of implied in, but the first one, definitely. The temptation that Christ faced, right? Now, this is the devil. The devil is the ego. It is the carnal mind. It is identification with form. And what is Jesus has been out in the wilderness a long time, hasn't had anything to eat. He's struggling. He's trying to see through the illusion. He's kind of Bodhidharma in his cave, right? And the devil, the carnal mind, says to him, if you are the Son of God, look, you're hungry. Why don't you command that these stones be made bread? Do you get it? If you are that. To which he responds, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. He was living on the truth. God is truth, right? God is reality. He was abiding in the reality and not getting seduced by the mind attempting to appropriate spiritual language to seduce him into re-identifying with the form. If we can abide in the reality of our own being, where else can you be? Can you be other than in reality? The mind can create a picture of you not in reality or a seeker of reality. But that picture of someone not in reality and seeking reality is being perceived by reality. I'm trying to get to awareness, right? Is being perceived by awareness, isn't it? Are you not aware of that? So the seeker and the seeking are both being perceived by what is being sought. Can you follow that? And so everything, life can unfold naturally and be as it is. It can't be anything else. With that if there, then I'm trying to abide in this reality. And when I do, then life will unfold naturally and be as it is. It already is unfolding naturally and being as it is. Drop any idea that you are anything other than the awareness and just look. Are you not aware? That is the awareness. And so a thought that says, I'm separate from this, I'm not getting it, or I got it and lost it, or I'm seeking it, I'm really seeking it. All of those are images appearing in front of awareness. And where are you? Which side of that lens are you on? And now doing activity, all of this is happening and not happening at the same time. There is no doing, but there is no doer, but there appears to be a doing. As Buddha put it, there's a path, there's a walking on the path, but there is no traveler. All of that is being witnessed by that which is not moving. I know I might have taken your question in a little different direction, Dave and Eileen, but hopefully it'll be good. And thank you for telling me it continued. It's really helpful because sometimes there can be 5 things in between while you're typing. So thank you for always including a little continued on the bottom when you go when you go past. Last night in my dream, I had a big awakening experience, bigger than I've had in an awake state. It was so real that the border between sleep state and awake state is very blurry for me now. So strange. It feels as like that dream is helping me to awaken in the waking dream. You say real life. Yeah, with quotes. Very good. Very good. Because they're both 2 different kinds of dreams. They're both just 2 different kinds of dreams. And so, yes, the message can come clearly through, even in dreams. I've had the same experience where it's like, right? And then I wake up in the morning and it just kind of dulls a little bit. Don't go along with the temptation to want to hold on to it, right? Because remember, that which is aware during the dream of the content that is the dream, and that which is aware in the waking state is the same. That consciousness never sleeps, right? Even in deep sleep or in swoon or in under anesthetic, when there's 0 content, right? It is still there. Consciousness is always there. There's just nothing registering it. It is pure presence at that point. Well, that's why Ramana Maharshi referred to dreamless sleep, content-free sleep, as the closest of the experiences we have. It doesn't mean that awakening is this big blank, but to to realize that you are not out cold, you are quite conscious, but without content. You see that deep sleep, dream, and the waking state, what's the common thread? Consciousness. And so what you are seeing, everything that is helping you to awaken, what it's doing is pointing you back to that which is always here. Not mix it up with the content, but to see it as that to which the content is always appearing. And if that's not there, there's no experience. And look, is that not exactly the same throughout your entire life? Has that ever changed? Right? It is the one thing in the universe that has never changed. So it should be the only place we look to for permanent contentment, permanent peace, permanent secure, permanent anything. Because there's none of it out here. There's only that. That sense of conscious awareness is the only thing that doesn't change. And since that is always you seeing, that consciousness and you are one and the same. They're not two. You are that consciousness. Now, in front of that, to that a consciousness is appearing all sorts of ideas as to what you are, all sorts of pictures of you, mostly an identification with the body. You're some kind of form. You're some kind of limited being in some, and gets very elaborate and abstract about it. Okay? All of those, no matter how involved and elaborate they get, and how much credibility they seem to have, are they not all appearing to exactly the same place? And if you weren't there first, just plain, ordinary, vanilla, completely aware consciousness, could any of those theories ever even arise? So you are the substratum. Right? And whenever I say that, I am, right? And all that means is the you. When I say you keep referring back to the body. I'm not. I'm referring, when I talk about you, I'm referring to that. I'm turning to that thread that has been there throughout your entire life, that's hearing my words right now, that will have the dream tonight, that will have the sleep, the state of dreamless sleep tonight, and that will experience tomorrow coming back up in consciousness again. Look, is there any difference in the one having the experience? So now just drop all ideas you have about what that is, because no idea will capture it, right? And just let yourself sink into the emptiness of your pure being, Sat Chit Ananda. That consciousness is being. It is not, there's a being that has consciousness. Consciousness and being are one, Sat Chit. And that consciousness and being is pure bliss. I seem to be just kind of going off in whatever direction I feel like today. I'm not sure I'm answering all the questions for you guys, but I'm sure you'll let me know if I don't. Again, it looks like everything's working. I mean, you guys are actually making comments on YouTube, and I'm seeing them in my little dashboard here. So this is like working out really well. I just hope that it's actually recording. We'll find out. Well, I mean, it's recorded on YouTube. It'll be available there, but I'd like to have a local recording as well. Le Signore Donne. Hello, GP, from Jonathan in South Wales in the UK. Hi, Jonathan. South Wales, another place I want to visit. Ursula from Madeira Island. Hello, Ursula. Good to see you. Good to have you. Lisa from Tarpon Springs, Florida. Hello. Tom McClellan says, thanks, GP, so much for your words on ADHD. GP, that means a huge amount to me. Good. Beck says, hi, GP and all others watching from H-Beck, which is Hendrik, right? From south of Germany. Hello, sir. Good to have you. Mary says, so basically, what is considered a mental illness is not brain issue, but nervous system issue. Now, Mary Sykes asked this question. I say yes, okay. And again, I always put the caveat on it. I'm not a doctor. I take no I cannot give medical advice, and I wouldn't. So don't construe anything I'm saying as medical advice. Okay, I have to put those there because otherwise I can get in trouble. That's what happens when you broadcast stuff in public. Um, in my experience, in my spiritual exploration, the body does not exist. It is only a belief about experience, and that experience is consciousness. The belief in a body, that I am a body, makes me feel and have the experiences of being a body with all the ills and limitations and malfunctions that is subject to. So to me, a mental illness is not a physical condition. It is something that has gotten out of whack in the nervous system. But of course, well, gee, if there's no body, is there a nervous system? Ultimately, no. We're only dealing with what we believe. So when I start talking about the belief, how we believe ourselves to be a body, I start making it, I start bringing it down as close to consciousness as I can get. The most important thing is to see that the conditioning that we have identified with, right, which is what the nervous system is, it's nothing but a bunch of conditioned functions, right, is not you. I could take that further, right, to show you how the nervous system doesn't even actually exist as an objective fact, but it's not that important, right? I don't need to go there. If I can first get you to see that you are not your conditioning, then you can begin to ask in earnest, well, then what am I? And is conditioning, excuse me, is consciousness actually being controlled and conditioned by circumstances? If the answer to that is yes, I, consciousness, am subject to everything, all the conditioning. I am basically locked in this jar of conditioning and there's no way out, right? Which is what humanity in general believes. Right? If I am not my conditioning, I am something else altogether. Consciousness is not the body. It is not thoughts. It is not emotions. It is not sensations, which means it is not subject to any of those things. Now, first off, that gives me the freedom from all of the stuff that is happening, all of the conditioning. Primarily, first, it does that by giving me separation. Secondarily, it gives me the power to actually go back and heal it, right, in whatever way I can, to the degree that I can. And there's a whole lot of mitigating stuff around that. But ultimately, any of that can be turned around if you're not identified with it. If you're identified with it, it's like flypaper, right? Right? You can't get rid of it. That identification is Velcro, right? And everything in conditioning is covered with Velcro, right? So if you got Velcro on you, you're in trouble. But if you don't have any on you, it goes right past, like clouds in the sky. You are the sky. You are not the clouds. And the sky is not concerned about the clouds. And when the clouds pass, they don't leave a trace in the sky. So, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. And this is the perspective of a spiritual teacher who has discovered that the universe is consciousness, not matter. And there is a budding amount of scientists who will actually say it. There's more that won't say it but actually believe it. But it is certainly not mainstream. The mainstream is harsh, hard reality, or excuse me, materialism, right? The Richard Dawkins uh, kind of world, where you are nothing but a bag of bones, and you know, this little brief thing of life. It started from oblivion. It ends in oblivion. That's it. A rather depressing look at life. Quite nihilistic, You know, I don't think it's any accident that that view, which probably are in the, which grew. I mean, there was a contest between that and the and the subtler view that was in quantum, but the materialistic view completely took over. You are nothing but matter. Consciousness is nothing but matter, and we know what it is. We'll eventually we'll be able to prove it in all its details and show you where that is. That took over early 20th century, and it's still dominant, but it's beginning to fall apart. That view is beginning to fall apart. Thank God, because it's not true. Sarah Sands, happy. Hey G, happy to be here. Sarah in France. Hey, um, Sandhya, namaste GP. I'm in from India. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ralph Nablach. Did I say that right? Adelaide, first time here. Thank you, Ralph. Glad to have you. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Glad you're here. From Adelaide. Are you oh, there's the meetup group with Sally Dusik? Dukik? I don't know how to pronounce her name. I've done a few live satsangs with that meetup group. So if you're in Adelaide, there's a non-duality meetup group run by Sally. Um, check it out. They're really great. Anja, hello from North Germany. Hi, Anja. La Signora Donna. Am enjoying listening from the stillness of my being, a whole different and fuller experience of satsang. Thank you. Yes, Jonathan, right. Um, yes, when you listen to satsang from satsang, you see it is simply a reverberation of yourself. Right? It's a whole different experience from the stillness of that. I'm simply reflecting you back to yourself. Right? Now, if you're not listening to that, if your head's full of questions, please don't worry about it. don't don't worry about it. If somebody is having that experience, wonderful, right? But don't cling to any experience, anyone ever. Don't cling to it. My mind is so confused. I've got to get rid of it. So no aversion, and it's so calm. I don't want to let go of it. Right? Don't worry about it. Calmness and confusion, stillness and activity are both the play of opposites passing in front of that which is beyond all opposites. The place from which you are witnessing is neither confused nor clear. It is neither calm nor agitated. It cannot be put into words. It is pure stillness. And if you are enjoying that stillness, just let it deepen. Let that be who you are, not just the place you're temporarily in, listening from, but make it who you are. Realize that stillness is you. That is your being. It is not simply a place you're visiting. It's not a vacation, right? It's not an Airbnb. This is home. Duck says, thanks, GP. You're welcome, Ducks. Oh boy. The thing just kind of skipped around on me here, as it does often. Sophie Austin. Hello, GP. Lovely to be here. Sophie from Hertfordshire. Hello, Sophie. All my friends in England. I've got to get over there and hang out with you guys. Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland. This would be great. Get in touch with my roots, I would. Dale Wiggins, thanks, GP, for your insights around autism. I have an uncle with autism I look after. I'm hoping what I've learned can also help him. Let me add one thing to that, Dale. And I'm actually pondering doing a class on this, on spiritual healing. I have some reluctances because I've done it before, and I did it a long, long time ago, and it didn't quite. People get more interested in getting the results than understanding why the results happen. So that's why I get reluctant about it. But when you are dealing with anybody who has an illness or a problem of any kind, whether it be mental or autism, whether it be emotional, whether it be a trauma, whether it be a physical illness, watch the image that you are holding of them. Can you see that when an image of someone presents itself to you, you can either see it as somebody with an illness, right? If you've gone a little bit further, you could see that because everybody experiences what they believe, that you could see it as someone with the belief of an illness, or you could see it as you being invited to believe that there is such a thing as someone who is ill. That's a very profound shift, a way of looking at it, and that's really how I look at spiritual healing. I deal with it completely within my own consciousness, that there is no such thing as a sick anyone. By the way, that's actually pretty much the way Ho'oponopono works. Okay, completely upon it within yourself. Everything that shows up, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Those four phrases, the depth behind it, it isn't just about that. It is that, ah, this is in my consciousness, therefore it is mine to deal with. What do I believe? Right? And then I can begin to see that all is consciousness. And in all consciousness, all is perfect. There is no such thing as a sick person. Right? Now that may be a little bit, I hope I haven't gone too far for people. Um, but and again, I'm not a doctor. This is an approach to spiritual healing. But I think some of you might be able to see the utility of that. You know, somebody who's a coach, what is the image you're holding of your client, right? Or in any of these cases, to liberate yourself from the belief there's anything other than the all, um, is to liberate others simultaneously. Carrie Brogan says there's a lovely document about a boy with autism she recommends called The Horse Boy. Very good. Thank you, Carrie. Mary Sykes says, whoops, my friend Barbara was diagnosed with OCD. Would you say that this is a nervous system issue? Yes, I would. Again, not a doctor. Link down below, just in case a snippet of this gets out somewhere. I'm not giving medical advice. Um, I've known people that have had it. I have a very, very close friend that, you know, I mean, it was extremely debilitating to the point where his whole house was filled up with stuff. It was a hoarder as well as the OCD, to the point he lived in he had a two-bedroom apartment in New York City, and he lived in one corner of the living room because it was all filled with the stuff. So it was it was severe. Um, but yes, OCD is ritualized protection, right? It's an infantile ritualized perfection, and it's an idea. It's superstitious almost in nature, that if I repeat these particular patterns, this will keep me safe from danger. Right. So that pattern's not going to go away until the underlying conviction that there's a danger that I have to avoid has been eradicated. And that eradication takes place through inner reconciliation, through creating a safe environment where the nervous system itself can see that the environment is actually safe, and that the assumption that it wasn't was the illusion. But you can't do this through the mind because this is a nervous system. It's an energetic thing, right? The nervous system, the energy system really it becomes more subtle when it isn't just, the body and the autonomic nervous system and all of that. It's far more subtle than that. There's just there's an underlying assumption that I am not safe. And so in there is assumptions about the reality in which I lived. And of course, the reason that gets put into place is because at a time in your life, you weren't safe. And this fellow, in this severe case, he lost, his father died, his mother's sister, his aunt who was close to, died, and his grandmother died all in the same year. the impact it had on his mother was so profound, she became almost comatose. There was nothing left to give. So all of a sudden, at the age of 5 years old, this guy, had his mother died too, at least he would have gotten into another home. Um, all of it was gone. And he protected himself through various, he was 5 years old. He's just making up ways in which to feel safe. And of course, his mother had become completely emotionally absent, and she could offer him nothing. And so that's where it came from, right? Now, if you could get back to that point and establish a place of safety that would allow all that energy, that traumatized energy, to finally discharge, you'd find that those habits would begin to dissipate because they'd no longer be necessary. And then, of course, the other half of that is to reestablishing an atmosphere of safety is also then coming to see, well, who am I? If you see that you are the consciousness that and not the conditioning, that is the ace in the hole. That is what that I've never actually been touched by this. This is the nervous system, and with that distance, I can now just kind of let the nervous system do its thing. I'm no longer participating in it to the same degree. I'm no longer feeding it, and even though it might be very uncomfortable, eventually that energy will dissipate. Um, yeah, I think that'll do for now on that. Where are we doing it? Where are we at? Let's see. I've got 45 more minutes. Okay. Naresh Baliga. Namaste, GP. Wonderful to be here. Naresh from Stockton, California. Good to have you, Stockton. Yeah. Brilliant, GP, says John Sheehan. Brilliant answer. It reconfirmed my sense that the I am that I am is not the body. It is not matter, but the subjective I am experiencing consciousness, experiencing consciousness. Yes. Yes, that's it. You are that I amness. And so the more you're with the I amness, the more you can see that the body is an experience, and we've called it the body and assumed that there was something out there creating this experience. But when you look, you say, my goodness, there's nothing out there. It's all consciousness. And it's quite liberating as that begins to dawn. Laura Ward. Hello, Laura. Hello from Laura in Bristol, England. Are you here? I think you're the first time here, Laura. A few names here I don't recognize from before. John M. What are you going to do when your form dies? I have no idea, John. I have absolutely no idea. John, I don't know what I'm going to do when Satsang is over in about 45 minutes, let alone what's going to happen when this form dissipates, right? There'll be the formless state, right? And because the nature of consciousness is to manifest itself, it will manifest once again. As what? Who knows, right? Who knows? That's the wondrousness of life, you know. When you're playing jazz, right? It's improvisational. You're not thinking about what it is you're going to play. It happens spontaneously in the moment. And that's the way to approach life, right? What am I going to do this evening? Don't know. What about tomorrow? Got a few things I need to get done. But other than that, what am I going to do? I have no idea. Right? It's all kind of happening spontaneously. And I could actually even take that a little bit deeper. Who's the you that's going to decide what I am going to do? Right? The doing happens in front of my self consciousness. I'm not doing anything. I am absolutely motionless, timeless, unchanging. And universe upon universe appears in front of me. I'm the Brahma principle that witnesses, as Nisargadatta put it, I am that principle which witnesses the birth and dissolution of the universe. So when this form dies, the entire universe dies. Ponder that. When John M. is no more, all of this is no more. You have none of it is there. Like when you wake up from a dream in the morning, everything in your dream, however elaborate and glorious or horrible it was, it's gone. The entire thing. So the body isn't just disappearing. This universe is disappearing. This is Brahma blinking. So ponder that. Daryl Sanders says, hello, GP and all. I like to refer to consciousness God as the unmoved mover. Yep. The pathless path, the gateless gate, the knowerless knowing, the doerless doing. Yeah. The travelerless traveling, the unmoved mover. Hendrik said, you're doing perfect. Oh, thank you. Sandhya, Namaste GP. Let's say consciousness is space and body walks 5 kilometers away. Then the space of 5 kilometers away will perceive the body? Yes. But is the space 5 kilometers away? Slow down. Take a look at that. Right? If I take this glass and I seal it tight, right? I'd say I even empty out the water. I seal it tight. Even suck all the air out of it. So the only thing inside this glass is space. And now I get on an airplane and I fly over to India, or I go to England or Wales, and I bring this with, and I come there and I open it. Is it different space? Have I taken the space from Washington and brought it to Wales? Ponder that. Space is non-local. The objects in space are local. So if that body is walking 5 kilometers, space is, and you think of consciousness as space-like, everything happening within it, right? Then the body is being perceived at every single step. 5 kilometers away is only relative to where the body was. It's not relative to consciousness. It hasn't moved a bit in consciousness, right? Consciousness is exactly the same. So your analogy of using space to understand it is useful. The space being self-aware consciousness that is non-localized, that is not a form, but is aware. It is awareness that is not a thing that is aware, right? Now, take it one step further, Sandeep. You are that space, right? So be that space, witnessing consciousness, the body moving. And in fact, witnessing having the entire experience of the body moving with all the things going by. Has consciousness moved? Ponder that. Don't even take my answer. Ponder it. Sean Wild, hi from England. Hi, Sean. Sophie. I keep saying Sophie. Not sure why. Where'd you go? There you are. There you are. Today there was a dropping away of holding on to experience and seeing that all is just conditioned. This appeared to happen in the crown. There appeared to be an arrogance or strong resistance. Continued. Let's see if I can scroll down. In the sacral, bringing presence there brought more light. Could you speak on the seeming energy in the sacral that still wants to control? Thank you. Yes, I can. And it is true that the insight you have, right? That awakening insight, right? Make sure I got this. That all is conditioned, right? Now that's an insight, right? It's a seeing, it's a knowing. So something has awakened to perceive correctly. You're now seeing through the eyes of truth. Oh, that's just conditioned. Now, that is not localized. Understanding wisdom is not localized. It does not happen in a place. And it is there before it even takes shape in a thought that says, experiment. Notice you saw the insight was there, and then you found the words to express it. You simply saw. That's conditioning. And now that does have an effect. If you look at it through the chakra system, the fact that you felt it at the crown of your head would correspond to what the model of the chakras talk about, that this is kind of the connection to the divine. It isn't actually a physical thing that's there, but it is tends to be kind of the way we sense things in the body. Matter of fact, we sensed it, and then we came up with this model of the chakras, right? Most people get to the chakras and are trying to figure out what it means. What they are is a model of what was experienced, and there's an experience of localized, just like we experience consciousness localized in the body, even though it's not, right? And so insight can I oftentimes have this feeling of just this explosive experience in the head. I remember when I was 19 and I had the big spiritual experience. It was if somebody had actually torn the top of my head off. It wasn't there. I was just completely open and this light was pouring in. Now, was my head off? No. No, it wasn't. It was an experience. Now, the same thing is true. It can drop down into this area, both in the navel and in the solar plexus. This is where we tend to feel threats to identity, which of course is going to happen. There can be arrogance. We want to hold on, right? When we have an insight, a deep awakening to who we are, it is rare when in one fell swoop, boom, all of the conditioning is gone. Very, very rare, right? For most of us, it reasserts itself for a while, which is okay. It's strengthening our insight, we're kind of being tested, right? The mind is shaking the tree to see if you're really as solid as you think you are, right? It's okay, nothing wrong with that. And you discover, oh, there was an arrogance about me. I wanted to be the one who knew the truth. I wanted to hold on to me. I like being, smart or pretty or rich, right? Go give everything you have to the poor and come and follow me. The rich guy said, let me think about it. And he was gone, right? Arrogance. There is some arrogance, and arrogance is a resistance. There is, and we will feel it viscerally. The body is not what we think it is. The body is not physical, it's energetic. So, yes, we feel these things, right? But you, consciousness, are not bound by that. You are not contained within what is being experienced. This is the key insight, right? So you don't have to be concerned. You can see that even this resistance is being seen from a resistance-free place. And seeing it, you can go, Father, forgive me, I didn't know what I was doing, and begin to let go of that. And it'll want to hold on, right? That's the nature of the sense of a separate self. It wants to hold on. It's active in the nervous system. It's okay. You are consciousness. You are aware of it. Every time you are tempted to identify with it, and you don't, it gets weaker until finally you won't even think about it. So does that help you with that, Sophie? Let me make sure I'm down there. In the sacral, bringing present in the sacral tends to be more about desire, empowerment, being present in life, um, uh, and it's probably more in the solar plexus. The desire to control life is coming from the sense of being a separate self and facing the utter vulnerability that is the reality of the human body makes us want to control, makes us to want to cling to the illusion of control. Realizing that you are consciousness and therefore are birthless and deathless puts an end to that. Because the body is not sentient. The body is not wanting to control. It is consciousness identified with the body that gives the illusion that somehow the death of the body is my death. Therefore, I need to control. Go beyond that. Go beyond who you think you are. You are consciousness, consciousness unmixed with anything else. And that is the open door, because the body is constantly dying and being reborn. It has no concern about whether it lives or not. There is an energy that wants to maintain a pattern integrity, but it is not attached at all to maintaining the form. Consciousness identified with the body as the separate self, and it is attached to maintaining the form because it thinks if this form dies, that I die. And that is not true. Bo Snartsky says, Snarsky, warm greetings from Canada, Western Canada. The clarity of your answers resonates deeply and gets imminently confined in me as consciousness. Very good. Just kind of immediately sinks in. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Western Canada. I'm going to be doing a retreat in, Victoria, which is far western Canada, just about as far western Canada as you can get in July. But confined in me as consciousness. Right. That resonance that you feel is truth, is reality. It is not you and then me speaking. That which is speaking, that which is hearing is the same. That's the resonance you're feeling. Right? You're feeling the one string that is vibrating in two places. David and Elaine, thanks, GP. Thanks for your answer, GP. Beautifully explained. It emphasizes the benefit of satsang by highlighting the subtle use of language, which can keep us attached to form and identity with a separate self. Yes, because language is dualistic in nature, and you can't have language without having objects, right? What is language but the description of one thing in terms of another? And the mind is capable of layers upon layers upon layers of abstraction, right? And so it abstracts something, and then it gives, in its imagination, it gives what is nothing more than an abstraction, purely a concept, the same status as some kind of reality. So my concept of something becomes the same as the thing, and it's not in the sight, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. It's a concept, it's an idea, it's imaginary. And of course, that's why it can collect all sorts of nonsense about it. We get trapped in it as a belief, and we feel ourselves being a separate self when there is no separate self. It doesn't exist other than a thought. And so you're not that. So I don't have to try to rejoin you, reunion you, yoga you, right? Make you one with God. You're already that. We're peeling away every thought that says you're not. That's 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 what this is about. And I just noticed there's a little duck up in the corner. That's the logo from the system I'm using. It won't be there next week because this is working very, very well. I guess if anybody's having any problems, let me know. But so far, this is working extremely well, and it's really easy for me to use on my side. And it will also broadcast multiple places simultaneously. So I can put this on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm not sure I will, but um, it's much easier and it's cheaper. It's saving me a little bit of money over some of the other systems that I've used. So very good. Mary Sykes, Barbara will appreciate your answer as I do now. Hers is negative thoughts that keep looping. Right. Good. Have her draw her attention away from the thoughts to the one who's experiencing the thoughts, and do that consistently. You'll find that the one witnessing the thoughts is not subject to those thoughts. We thought we were. It's all about if I can get rid of these thoughts, these obsessive thoughts, these negative thoughts, I want to get rid of all these thoughts. And so we get into this fight, right? And the thoughts get stronger because I want to get rid of this negative thought. Is a negative thought, isn't it? It's terrible thought, bad thought, go away thought, right? But if instead you go, okay, well, who cares? The negative thought is there. Fine. Sometimes really severe thunderstorms pass through the sky. Who am I? Right? Oh, I'm aware of the thoughts. They're not aware of me. There's not a thought over there looking at me going, right? I'm aware of the thoughts. So let's put my attention on just being aware of those thoughts without getting drawn into them, without resisting them, without saying, I got to get rid of these thoughts, which is another thought, by the way, right? Just really to this place that's prior to thought and watch what happens. Just watch, right? You will, I'm not going to plan out what happened. You'll tell me what happens. So give my love to Barbara. Mary. Dorothy. Hi, Dorothy. So glad I found your videos and inner reconciliation course. Oh, me too. I recently realized I've been living out a victim attitude of constant reaction. Since I became aware of this, I feel even more helpless and continue defeated and depressed than I did before. And there's an underlying rage and desperation. Any ideas as to what to do, how to remain in the neutral observer of these feelings? Let's see. Right. The victim, yeah. Well, first, let me just show you what's happening, and that will help you actually stay more as the witness of it. When you're a child, you are a victim. You are helpless. You are completely vulnerable. You have no power. You have no capacity to do anything. You're little more than an extension first of your mother's body and then of the tribe. So what happens is if your capacity as a child is so shut down that there's very little room for you to express yourself or ask for what you want, receive what you want, actually be a full participant, right? If it's a more repressive environment, one of the strategies in which the nervous system comes up with in order to survive in that environment, one of the strategies it can choose is the victim. And taking on the role of the victim allows you to, in a sense, repress the utter pain and anger. Because a child can get really angry. I'm watching my granddaughter, right? I live with my granddaughter. So I see the anger. I see the anger. Even tantrums. She rarely has tantrums, but I have seen tantrums, even some older children. And what that is a rage that that can't be expressed because it's even more dangerous. I know as a child that if I expressed my anger, it was worse than what I was already getting, right? So I just didn't do it. Keep it inside. And for a while, the victim kind of comes up because you are a victim, right? You really are a victim of circumstances then, right? And so there's the anger has to be suppressed because it's even more dangerous to express the anger. So instead, you become the victim. You just kind of docile and you're deferring and you go along with it and all of that, and that. Let me make sure I'm seeing all that. That is the underlying rage that you are feeling and desperation. It's real. That was the underlying rage and desperation you felt when it was happening, when it really was happening to you, right? But you could not possibly express it, so it had to be suppressed. And there's probably a lot of layers. But as you've been observing the victim and then feeling the helplessness, suddenly this underlying rage and desperation comes up. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's not pleasant, right? It's not going to kill you, right? And the very fact that you have been remaining as the neutral observer is what's allowing it to come up. Now, make an even safer place than you've ever made before for the anger, the rage, and the desperation, because these are very real. See, the thing is, though, that while they're real at the time, especially when they happen when you're young, that's the sum total of your reality, right? You don't know there's anything outside of that. So the energetic assumption gets created that this is real. And so this strategy of being the victim and deferring and hiding your feelings and pushing the anger down becomes a strategy for life. It just assumes that this is a permanent characteristic, because the child in that for that child in that environment, it is permanent. At least it's permanent within the context of the child. It'll be many years before the child has access to a larger world, but by that time, this assumption's already in place. So it says, so you say, how to remain neutral observer of these feelings? You're doing it, my friend. You're doing it, right? First off, you are the neutral observer. The moment you realize that these are feelings coming up, that they come from a deep place within you, they come from a very wounded, traumatized place within you, the recognition of that is the neutral observer, right? And don't be overwhelmed, right, if it gets intense for a while. Just being the neutral observer doesn't mean these things aren't going to get intense. All it means is that you're not identified with them anymore. You are the observer. Now, another word I refer to that neutral observer is the peacemaker, right? Which has got more oomph in it, doesn't it? You are the peacemaker. You are creating the safe environment in which all of this stuff that couldn't come out before because it would get hurt can come out. This is how you diffuse and discharge the energy of traumas. It'll heal physical conditions, emotional states, and you will suddenly discover, as this works itself out of your system, you will have a different level of self-expression that you never had before. You'll have access to parts of you that you might not have even, you might have completely forgotten you even had. So just keep doing it. Keep practicing bodily awareness. Keep practicing allowing, knowing that the nervous system isn't in this to make you suffer. It's not in this to kill you. It's not in this to drive you crazy. It's in this to discharge what it needs to. So it's not going to push you any further than you can go, but you're going to find you can go way further than you thought you could, because you are the neutral observer. That's really where you're looking from. Before, you were this repressed victim, angry victim, right? You were identified with that. Now you're not. This is just the energy that's still present in the nervous system, and you are the peacemaker with it, providing it the all-loving, safe space in which it can come up. You are being for yourself the one who you wish had been for you when all of this was happening. If you treat yourself the way you would want to have been treated then, right? Because if you had, this repression, this victimhood wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have needed to. So now be that for yourself. Don't fight it. Don't try to push it away, because then you're doing to yourself exactly what happened already, right? Open up your heart. Your heart has infinite capacity for allowing. It is your nature. This is the goddess within you, right? Just the infinitely receiving. This is Kanon. I hope that helps you, Dorothy. Thank you. Thank you. You're doing fantastic. Trust me. I've seen a lot of this. Oh, what happens? Oh dear. We've got like a gazillion. Let's see, how far down do we go? Let's see, how far back do we go? Whoa. Oh, okay. There we are again. Max P. Hello, Max. There's no way to self-realization, is there? Greetings from Vienna. Oh, Vienna. Wow. I don't think I've had somebody in Vienna before. Have you been here before? I think you have. Um, there isn't as a person, no. But to say there's no way to self-realization would be to kind of like, then what, right? It's one of those paradoxes, right? Now, if you talk to somebody who is like the strict Advaitist, what I call the neo-Advaitist, they say, nope, no way to self-realization, right? Okay, then what do? Nothing. There's nothing to do, nowhere to be, place to be. And that's true, right? The person doesn't wake up. The one you think you are does not wake up. There's no way to self-realization for that person, for the image you're holding of yourself. You, as you actually are, awaken to see that you are not that person. It's not, it is not something you do, although it appears as though you do, right? The reality is it's all being done by grace, right? You're here in satsang asking this question, right? In a sense, you could say you're here, you're doing something towards your self-realization. You want to know about this, right? In a sense, that's happening. Well, what impelled you to do that? What has been directing interest and intention and attention, and even formulated this question in your mind? Where did that come from? Well, that came from the truth of being waking up to itself. You could refer to that as grace. So there is no way to self-realization, but there is. Right? It is, self-realization is happening. Buddha, Buddha referred to it brilliantly. Somebody asked him, have you attained full awakening? He says, I cannot say that I have attained because I haven't attained. When you're talking in really trying to be very precise in non-dual language, you have to always go to both sides for that and say there's no way to self-realization and there's a way to self-realization. There is no path, and here's the path, walk on it, right? You cannot, if you take either one of those sides, take the side of the absolute, right? No way to self-realization, right? You have cut off the other side. You have gotten stuck in the absolute. If you say, oh, there is, and it becomes the progressive path, I got to meditate for 30 years and I'm going to go through 5 more lifetimes, you're stuck over in the relative. That's why Suan Sung, the Zen master, had the koan. He says, he bangs a stick on the ground. He says, stick and sound, same or different, absolute or relative. If you say they're the same, I will hit you 30 times. If you say they're different, I will still hit you 30 times. Now, quick, which is it? Stick and sound, same or different? Self-realization, is there a way to it? If you say there is, I will hit you 30 times. If you say there isn't, I will still hit you 30 times. Now, way to salvation, to self-realization, no way to self-realization? Tell me. Right? Your mind cannot grasp this. There is no way, and yet it unfolds as a way. Right? In the dream, there's an experience of awakening, right? Oh, I'm dreaming, like a lucid dream. And then there's the awakening. And then you realize that none of that actually happened, right? You've never actually even been asleep. Awakeness has always been awakeness. Consciousness has always been consciousness, right? But at the same time, what am I doing right now? I'm directing your attention, right? All of this is happening in your dream. And of course, in the dream, there is no way. It's just a dream. And what happens? Is anything going on in the dream actually causing the dream to awaken? No. It's a reflection of the awakening that is happening. That's the best way I can put it, Max. Is that helpful to you? Does that kind of bring it home? Don't get stuck on any side. You know, the mind, the egoic mind is quite capable of appropriating non-dual language and kind of applying it, um, uh, conceptually or intellectually, and you come up with the Neo-Advaita. And yet, you'll be able to say, there is no way to self-realization. You can't be awakened. You're not awakened. You're always awake. There's nobody who's not awake, right? Which is true, which is true. Right? But what good does that do to anybody? Right? Remember, Buddha gave us the best example in that he would never engage in purely theoretical or philosophical conversations. His measurement of whether or not it was valuable was, does it alleviate suffering? Right? When he set out for enlightenment, he was not setting out to become enlightened. He set out because he wanted to find the cure to suffering. That's what motivated him, and that's what he found. And the first sutra he gave was the Four Noble Truths of Suffering. There is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there's an end to suffering, and there's a means to that end. And that characterized his entire career, every sutra he gave. So that was the litmus test he put it into. Was it just a theoretical thing? Oh, there is nobody, there isn't anybody. If to see that there is no way to realization brings you to realization, and which means an end of suffering, good. If it doesn't, then practice. Do a practice. Do a way, right? Who cares, right? The important thing is to see that self-realization, who is the self that gets realized? That's the question. Mooji put it this way. So the one who starts the inquiry does not finish the inquiry, but is finished by the inquiry. So yes, in the beginning, it appears as though you're doing things to bring about or to participate or experience self-realization. All of that dissolves in self-realization, yet all of it was a part of its appearing as experience. Right? That's the dream of waking up. That's it's the best I can put it, my friend. I hope that's helpful. Yeah. Um, Dave Rose says, yeah, jazz and a live Grateful Dead jam. Oh, yeah, purely improvisational. I love the Grateful Dead. That was so much fun. I saw them back in 1968 at a rock festival on acid. What can I say? I saw them in the most at prime time, right? I think LSD was actually even still legal then. Mary Sykes, thank you to Sophie. I became aware of my own control issues of letting go, and the constriction came up in my solar plexus. Yeah, very good. Sunday, thank you, GP, for your answer. You say as consciousness, we don't know what is going to happen as universe does everything. Sounds like consciousness and universe are different things. Right. Unfortunately, that's the nature of language, Sunday. They're not different things. That we don't know what's going to happen. Universe does everything. Now, the universe is the happening, right? Consciousness, for lack of a better word, does everything. But it's not a doer, not like someone doing something, right? Consciousness pondering its own nature. Consciousness conscious of itself and in love with itself makes the universe, right? Think of it as this infinite mind, infinite awareness, infinite consciousness. But it is conscious, right? So it is pondering. It's not blank, it's not empty. It's not a zombie, right? So what's it pondering? Well, it's pondering the only thing there is, itself. I'm pondering myself. What is the outcome of that? The outcome of that is consciousness conscious of itself, or the infinite self-image of being. That is the universe. And it's happening spontaneously because consciousness pondering its own nature is happening constantly. It is the nature of consciousness to be conscious of itself, being consciousness and bliss. It is conscious of itself because that's all there is. So it is conscious of, but not like you're conscious of an object, right? You're conscious of this cup. It is conscious of itself. Consciousness being one. The end result is the universe is the self image of God, if you would. It is God pondering her own infinitely loving nature. So, no, they're not two different things any more than the reflection in a mirror is different than the original, right? In that case, that even falls apart. The image the mind holds of itself is mind, right? The dream at night you have is mind, isn't it? The image consciousness holds of itself is consciousness, is it not? So there's not even two. But language, of course, is very, very confusing, right? So we have to use dualistic terms, and if we're artful at it, we can use them in such a way that we can point nicely back to that which is beyond words, so that you become transparent to the transcendency. The words carry the word being just imperceivable in all by itself. Very good. Ava, about non-locality of space. The object doesn't move in relation to space. It removes in relation to other objects only. Very good, yes. When there's only one object in the space, there's no moving at all. Absolutely. Am I right? Same is truth for non-locality of consciousness. Yes. Yes, almost, right? Right. An object doesn't move in relationship to space because space is everywhere simultaneously. It has to be another object for it to move relative to, in order for there to be such a thing as motion. And motion has no meaning if there's only one object. Is it moving? How do you even know? It becomes completely, it's like division by zero. Completely undefined and undefinable. Now take objects out of space completely. Now there's not even now you don't even have an object and not object. You don't even have space and object. Right? Now what? Now there's no motion at all. There's no moving. Even the thought of moving doesn't exist. There is only self-awareness. This is the absolute. The absolute does not live in this vacuum, though. The absolute includes all forms. Right? So, but this does point quite nicely to the non-locality, right? No, because locality, motion, the things that give us the sense of something is located in a space is always relative to something else. This is what Buddha meant by dependent arising. You can't know where this is except in relationship to something else. And if you completely remove all content, everything is everywhere. There is the center is everywhere and the boundary is nowhere. To quote Black Elk. Gary McLeod. Hello, Gary. Why be caught thought bound? The answer is always found, posing as a question. See past your preconceptions, undividing, uncomparing. See, without trying, you are free. If that is your actual lived experience and not just conceptual, and I don't know because I don't know you, then that is true. If it is conceptual, then it is not the whole truth. Why be caught thought bound? Who would be caught thought bound? The answer is always found. By who? Posing as a question. See past your preconceptions. Who's that you who has the preconceptions? Undividing, comparing. See, without trying, you are free. Who's the you that is free? I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. I'm only asking, is this your lived experience? And getting on close to the end here. It's 4 a.m. in India. I don't have sleep eyes. Don't want to miss the jewels of your words. Thank you, GP. So I'll be a recording, Sanja. 4 a.m. in India. Wow. That's man, that's right. Of course. You guys are, amazing. Yeah, and you're even 12 and a half hours ahead of us here in the West Coast. Sean, GP, have you ever experienced being in a black void? And do you know what it is? It happened to me one night a few years back. My consciousness was in this black nothingness. Were you there? Yeah. Don't worry about it. Yes, I'm trying to remember. It seems to me I have, but it's not like really vivid. Uh, Fact of the matter is that happens to you every single night in deep sleep. Every night we go through a period of deep sleep. We're not dreaming, we're not awake, there's no content. It's a black void, right? It's okay. If that's experienced, that's happened to you, all it means is that for a moment, while you were still in your waking state, all content just fell away and there was nothing. Well, except you. You were there, right? Because consciousness wasn't in the black nothingness. The black nothingness was in consciousness. Otherwise, you couldn't tell me about it, right? So the consciousness was aware of simply there was no content. Now tell me, was it an unpleasant experience? If it was an unpleasant experience, that means that mind was also there commenting about the black nothingness. If it was really black nothingness, there'd be no sense of anything being wrong. Something else has to step in and say, oh, this is uncomfortable, this is a problem. And maybe in the moment it was happening, it didn't, and then later it did. What was that? My goodness. Don't make anything out of it whatsoever. It was simply experiencing nothing. And so, but you were there experiencing the nothingness. So it wasn't nothing, right? It was just no conscious experience. There was simply consciousness and nothing else. Sophie, thank you for the confirmation. And we'll listen again as a deep transmission. Funny you should say riches and, and Jesus story is after this, seeing one of my trials is how to communicate with family. Oops. Whoa. Oh dear. Let's see if I can. It's continued. Where's the rest of you, Sophie? Uh, Around unresolved financial wrangling over a grandmother's will. It's come to me to walk away, yet it is still a challenge when knowing her true wishes. It's the taking on of this as no others fighting. I, to say that doesn't mean to just walk away from an inheritance, right? This isn't resignation. It's to walk away from being a person personally attached to the outcome. Simply be the presence in the controversy of the peacemaker, the completely neutral participant, yet wanting to have a resolution to it. The ego can say, well, I'm just going to be really spiritual now, and I'm just going to, I don't care, and walk away. The ego is capable of doing that. I don't think you should do that. I think you should stay present with it. Let it be an opportunity for that part of you where you're attached to the money, and let go of the attachment, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean letting go of the inheritance, only the attachment to it, so that you're fine either any which way it goes. You're fine. And that being fine provides the space in which you will be the most powerful participant. That will provide a space in which everything can resolve itself harmoniously. So very good. Very, very good. Thank you. Jay says, Namaste, G. Jay, this is Jay Pillai. I was reading The End of Your Life by Adyashanti. I was reading the section on being honest, and he was talking about questioning a thought and looking at the feeling associated with it. That thought and doing this until the mind attacks settle down. Well, what about being awareness in the midst of these feelings? Question? That's very good. And Adyashanti, who's one of, oops, I didn't mean to show that. Adyashanti, who is one of the teachers I do recommend. He is on my A list, right, with Muji and a few others. But like myself, sometimes you can just be just go into that place of pure conscious awareness of it, and that will be enough. Separation takes place, and whatever energy has to be discharged will be discharged. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more active with it. A thought's there. There's a feeling associated with the thought. There can be stories about that feeling. It could be a rather complex little setup. There can be attachments and aversions. There can be identifications. So sometimes you have to be with it enough um, that it is completely dissolved from the system. Now, if you start from the point of view that you are consciousness, loving consciousness, simply embracing what is in this moment, you'll be providing the space for the exactly correct unfoldment to take place. Right? You won't need, and you don't need to make any analysis of it. You don't decide, well, do I do this technique now or this technique later? Do I meditate on it? Do I let it go? Do I tap? Do I release it? Right? Do I release the three wants or something like that? None of that will be will be will even occur to you. You're simply being present. That's it. Just be present. That's being honest, right? Honesty is don't try to hide anything from yourself. Don't say, "Oh, I'm really spiritual, so I'm not attached," right? When you are. If you are, you are. I'm feeling that sense of attachment. Okay. I'm really attached to the outcome of this. I really am. Now that's just an honest admission, and it feels good the way this comes out. All right, let's be with that sense of attachment. And there's also the aversion, right? Oh, yeah, there's an aversion too. Not only is attachment to being there, there's a fear that it's not going to be. Oh, all of a sudden the picture starts getting clear. That's the kind of honesty. Rather than just immediately going, well, I'm just pure consciousness, right? Right? That's what he's referring to. To not use non-dual language and ideas to kind of do the end run around the being completely present with what's here in this moment. This is my big criticism of neo-Advaita teachers, is that they do that. They make it an end run, right? Rather than being present with what's here and alleviating suffering. I'm a Buddhist at heart. I'm Sufi at heart too, but a Buddhist at heart, in that the reason for doing this is to alleviate suffering. We seek enlightenment for the relief of suffering of all beings, right? And not just because it's some glorious state we want to be in, right? So that honesty is, oh, I really am attached to this. I really do care. I really do want that, right? So you be with that, right? And let that explore, let it develop. Okay, why am I so attached to this? What is it that I think this is going to bring me that I don't have? And now it becomes a doorway for a deeper exploration, right? Rather than just trying to, do the end run and get your I'm pure consciousness. Om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, right? I really am pure consciousness because I've seen through all the different ways I've been identified with not being that consciousness. Um, So I am over time here, so I'm going a little bit further. Carrie asked, did Muji give you a transmission, or is it even possible to wake someone up with an energetic transmission? Um, there was no formal thing that Muji did giving, here's the transmission, right? Um, I remember the energy of being in his presence and the profound effect it had on me, even before any words were spoken. Um, I know the effect it had just looking into his eyes for a moment, getting darshan, but there was no like conscious transmission, and he doesn't do things like that. He is simply present, and his presence, because it is the pure absence of I, right? He is the pure self there. There's no ego at all, none, zero. Right? He is pure presence. That is what you feel. That is the transmission. It's the same with Ramana Maharshi. He would often sit for hours and not say a word. People would come and just sit there, They'd sit there for a while, and all the questions they were going to ask had no more questions. They got up in utter inner silence and walked away. Was that a transmission? In a sense, yes, that is the genuine transmission. And that is that you are allowing yourself to vibrate in harmony with the Buddha field, you might say, right? Now, immerse yourself more fully in that so that the you that is vibrating in harmony disappears and all there is the Buddha field, right? Right? So the vibrator is gone and all you have is the pure vibration of the Buddha energy. And then you and your master are one. Uh, Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, beautiful question. Awareness. GP, I wanted to say that I'm a clinical psychologist, but I learn about your a lot from your perspective on psychopathology. Wow, what an honor. Thank you. Thank you. I actually have other people who are very good and some even well-known psychologists that have gained from that perspective as well, because it's what psychology was reaching for. And not realizing that the non-dual perspective, when it is truly engaged with and followed to its depths, not just taken on the surface. Again, I'm kind of ragging on the neo-Advaitist things, and not just there's nobody here, there's nothing to do, and all of that kind of stuff. Nothing exists. If in fact it becomes this clear, sober examination of every aspect of life as we are experiencing it, you get to the essence of what psychology and its study of the pathology are trying to get to. Because in essence, what it is a self-image that isn't real, right? That is, it isn't who you really are. It is a creation of the nervous system and an identification with conditioning, and the inevitable result of that is going to be pathological because it's not stable. It's searching constantly for stability, right? And the weaker it is in getting that stability, the more crazy it is, the more psychotic it becomes. The point, if it can't keep itself together, it is psychotic, right? And you're basically a section 8. We all experience it to a certain degree, right? Different degrees of the pathology, but what it is the essential instability of the false sense of self. That is all pathology, period. And everything that self is doing, clinging to try to bring it a sense of security and safety, because it cannot actually have it. Its nature is insecure and unstable, right? And therefore, it is pathological in nature. And so, but the key that psychology is reaching for, and which in a few instances has found, and I think is going to be happening more and more, um, the, the ultimate cure is knowing that which is substantial, who you actually are, not just an image you've acquired, and not just an improved image that you've developed over time, but who you actually, truly, eternally are. What you are cannot be unstable. It cannot be anything but absolutely sound and perfect. Right? And it's what you are. Therefore, there's no instability, there's no pathology, there's nothing it needs to reach for. It is the end of the search. Call off the search. Right? So thank you for that. Thank you very much, awareness. I am so glad that it can contribute because we're both in the same game. Alleviating suffering through discovering, seeing through the illusions and coming into a deeper sense of who we really are. I'm aware of, there's awareness of. Okay, Jay said something else. Oh, he continued. Jay said more. Sometimes I feel like thoughts and feelings is all I'm aware of, but there's awareness of being aware. But then my mind comes in and says, you need to focus on this activity. Well, the mind's going to say that. Yeah. And there are times, of course, if you are doing, if you're driving just to be going home, please don't. Keep your eyes open and do what you need to do when you're doing your work. Do your work. But you'll find over time that the work is getting done, and there's awareness of this work getting done, and less of a sense of somebody actually doing it. And yes, you're aware of being aware. Of course, that's self-awareness, because they're not two awarenesses, one here and one over there, and I'm aware of that. There's only one awareness. So to be aware of being aware is simply self-realization. That's self-realization. So enjoy. H. Beck or Hendrick, right? When the body is not there anymore, your example, and the one universe dissolves, consciousness will stay. But what will register that non-event? Consciousness, of course. Consciousness will register that that the body is gone, that the universe, because consciousness is consistent, it's continual. Just like the event when you're 10 years old registered on consciousness, the event of your birth registered in consciousness. Well, consciousness, you might say, but that would mean that nobody doing the watching of that, skipped around again. That would mean that nobody doing the watching of that to happen. Did you continue this somewhere else? Let me make sure. Okay, getting to the end. Right. Yeah. There is being. Consciousness is always present. Consciousness is not a person, right? So you can't say there's someone that it's registering, right? Right? Because consciousness is not a finite being. It's not a person. It's not a form. It's not a being. It is being itself. It is self-aware existence. And therefore, everything is its own awareness of itself. The coming into and going out of existence of a universe is consciousness aware of its fault. So there's not someone that is registering it. The someones are appearing and disappearing in the consciousness that is not someone, but is simply infinite being itself, infinite self-aware being. Is that that work for you, Hendrik? Sorry, I'm speeding up a little bit because we're over by a bit. Thanks so much, GP. From Sandra, can you explain what is perceiver is perceived? Well, Chris Skills, who are your top 5 teachers, GP? Muji, Adyashanti, Rupert Spira, Francis Lucille, and Gangaji. Oh, Muji. Forgot Muji. Yeah. Muji, Adyashanti, Francis Lucille, Rupert Spira, and there's one more. Yeah, I'd put Gangaji in that same category. The only female in that group, too, by the way. Please explain what is perceiver is perceived. I'm not exactly sure the context in which you mean that, Sanja, because one of the things that can be quite illuminating is to realize that the ultimate perceiver cannot be perceived, right? So the way in which you come to know yourself is not through subject-object relationship, the way I would know this cup or my glass of water or the computer sitting in front of me, right? I know that through a subject-object relationship. But when you're looking at yourself, when you're trying to see yourself, right, you can't refer to an image in your mind. That's not you. You're the one seeing. So the perceiver of all things, which is you, cannot be perceived. So how do you know yourself? How do you even know you exist? And you do. Something else, right? It is not subject-object relationship. It is deep, it is intimate, it is intuitive, it is self-evident, but it is not knowledge in the traditional way that we think of it. This is jnani knowledge, Jnana, Ni. The knowledge of this is jnana, which is that particular non-subject object knowing. That's my granddaughter yelling for daddy in the background. So when I'm coming to know myself, at first when I say, well, who are you? People start picturing themselves, their memories and associations, their bodies, what they look like. But of course, those aren't direct self-knowing. direct self-realization. Those are indirect. Those are thoughts about myself. My knowing myself is the actual experience of me here and now in this moment, right now as it is. And that is not perceived through any of our normal ways, not through reason, not through any of our perceptual capacities. It is direct and intimate. Other than that, the one we imagine ourselves to be, I think I am this person perceiving a world around me. That one can be perceived. Right? At that point, the perceiver now becomes we realize that I was identified with this. I thought this was me. And I realized that this is not the subject, that I'm the subject, and that this, what I thought was the subject, is actually an object, and I'm perceiving it. So now it goes to the other side of the lens. So it's as far as I can go with it today, because we're running out of time. I gave Chris his top 5 teachers. Sophie, thank you much. GP, such a relief to hear. I get what you're saying. Wonderful. Good. Jay says, thank you. Max says, oop, thank you, GP. I am not self-realized yet. I had glimpses of no self, and it's the best. Well, not for me. Yes. Not for who you think you are, but yeah, it's the best because it's free of all the burdens, free of suffering. Right? Now just realize that who had that glimpse of the no self? It's not there was a Max who had the glimpse of the no self. The no self glimpsed the no self. Max disappeared, and what remained was no self. That is what you are. Okay? So the ego comes back and tries to claim the experience. Yes, that's it. You stay with the no self, right? Don't think, oh, I lost this, I glimpsed it, right? Right? That's the ego trying to claim the experience back. That is you. The no self had the glimpse of the no self. The dream dissolved for a second, and then whoa, nope, can't have that happen. And the mind came back. That's all that happened. No problem. No problem at all. Don't make an issue of it. Just remember who you are. Thank you, GP, from Evan. Thank you, G. Your answers to all of us here. Amazing satsang. Wonderful. Thanks from Mary. Thank you. That was helpful from Hendrik. Eckhart Tolle too. Yeah, that's right. I forgot Eckhart. Yeah, Eckart's a great teacher as well. I love Eckhart. Um, do you have a tab hint for me, Max? Maybe have a tip hint for me? Abide as the self, right? Every time the thought comes to you, Max. All right, it's answered. Thank you so much. Oh, this is for everybody. Whenever the thought comes to you that says, I'm not the self, but I'm trying to be, I'm awakening, I'm a seeker, I'm the path, recognize that the awareness that is aware of that thought is what you're seeking, and you're already there. End of the seek, end of the show, end of the road, end of line, end of the movie, fade to black, deep kiss, the end. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. I love you all. Namaste.